Hello, everybody. I hope everyone had a nice holiday and are getting ready for the rest of the year. Today, we're going to talk about the role of vocational rehabilitation consultant in the process of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we'll start with an overview of what really can you offer to human resource managers responsible for medical leaves and accommodations in the workplace as a value-added asset to the interactive process. And we're specifically talking about the role of the ADA vocational rehabilitation consultant because it is different. They would not necessarily be responsible, and I would not expect them to have the skill to do the whole interactive process. But we certainly can add some real assistance to HR managers who are overwhelmed with some of these challenges, or they run into an accommodation that is really more complex than they've experienced before. And they're not having a lot of assistance or help identifying a real accommodation. We know vocational rehabilitation consultants and experts are trained in this area, that they are trained on how a disability impacts an employee's ability to perform functions of the job. So what we want to do today is give you a brief overview of what we think you could do and experience if you are a vocational rehabilitation consultant and what your role is in that process. But also, if you're HR, you're overwhelmed and you need help with essential function job descriptions, you need help developing them, actually doing the on-site essential function job analysis. You need help with creating or amending those job descriptions because somebody's asking for an accommodation that has a related mental condition or cognitive disability that you are not familiar enough with to be able to understand the nuances on how it impacts their ability to perform the functions of the job. And keep in mind, many employees are not able to clarify that in any depth for you without some assistance. Now, having gone through rotator cuff and tendonitis surgery or tendon surgery recently, and I'm still recovering from it, I've got a really clear understanding of the lack of communication that even occurs or appears to expect to be occurring between the surgeon, the physical therapist, and potentially even the chiropractor if you're using a chiropractor. My experience is the physical therapist follows the directions of the surgeon. However, the surgeon doesn't necessarily respect direction. And they're the big brains. They really are doing the heavy lifting. So the challenge of getting the detailed activities of daily living, which would then generate the restrictions for an accommodation in the workplace, seem to be difficult to document. A vocational rehabilitation consultant is trained to understand how to get at the nuance of these challenges. So let's go ahead and jump in. So let's go through what we feel is important for you to understand as a Voc Rehab consultant. If you're interested in stepping into this arena and you want to let HR individuals understand that you've got a value-added service that you could provide to them. So what's the first step? First of all, we've got two different regulations we're talking about. We've got the Americans with Disabilities Act, and your role in this process is once we've determined we've got an individual with a disability, we're now determining if they are qualified to perform the functions of their job with their disability at a meets expectations level. That is what a qualified individual with a disability is under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So the challenge is, will the accommodation assist them? Can we find a way to overcome their disability or mitigate their disability so they have the ability to perform the essential functions of the job? We can make medical inquiries. We don't call it strictly everybody. If you're still doing that, please talk to somebody who's an expert in this area and find a methodology that treats your employees the same in this area. But it is okay to get detailed information about how those disabilities impact the ability of the employee to find function. It's okay to get detailed information about how the employee's disability impacts their ability to perform the functions of the job. And we talked about this just a minute ago. It is difficult to get that data from the medical providers. And when you have PPOs, they've got a system that is checking boxes. So you may not even be getting data from a doctor. You could be getting data from a medical assistant who spoke to the employee and you're really not getting or being provided objective, clear information. That's what the HR person is running into. That's why we need Voc Rehab experts who understand their role in this process. So we're determining with an ADA accommodation if we're able to make that reasonable accommodation without an undue hardship. Now, you're typically not involved in the undue hardship stage of it because the employer is going to determine if the requested accommodation is more than they can manage in the organization. They've got many reasons they do that, but that would not be something you'd necessarily be involved in. But you'll be involved if there's an undue hardship and identifying another accommodation. Now, that is different, everybody, than the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act, which you also may be asked to participate in. The Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act says you do not need to perform all the essential functions, but any function you can perform, boy, we want to accommodate you in. And if you can't perform all of them, well, we're going to look at, we can provide leave as an accommodation as another piece of that, or maybe you'll be using film. But the role for the Voc Rehab consultant changes a little bit, but not from the perspective of how does their disability impact their ability to perform the functions of the job. And as Voc Rehab consultants, can we mitigate that? So as a high-level overview, the ADA accommodation blueprint starts with temporarily designating the employee. We are not necessarily calling doctors. We're asking the employee to get the comprehensive ADA accommodation blueprint training. And the comprehensive ADA accommodation blueprint training and overview and system that we provide at LMS does not include the whole steps for the Voc Rehab consultant. The Voc Rehab consultant is focused on engaging in the good faith interactive meeting with or without the HR professional involved, and assisting in the designation of the accommodation because you've identified a way to mitigate how the disability impacts the ability to perform the functions of the job. The ADA individual, the leave and accommodation coordinator, will be starting with temporarily designating the ADA accommodation. Once they've designated, they're getting information from the employee regarding how their disability impacts their ability. And depending how well the form they use is designed, they get that easily, or they may not. You have a pretty comprehensive medical certificate to really nail down information. But the key is that the employee is responsible for identifying how the disability impacts the ability to perform the functions of the job. However, we know they don't always do that very effectively because they're not getting real detailed information from the medical professional. So once the HR professional has conditionally designated the ADA accommodation process, then we're getting the information from the employee and we are implementing that good faith interactive meeting. And that's the piece that you're involved in as a Voc Rehab expert. A decision regarding an accommodation should never be made during a solo review of the medical certificate or prior to conducting the good faith interactive meeting. If you feel you are being pressured to provide well, what do you think? I would be very, very cautious. The whole purpose of the American with Disabilities Act is to interact with the employee. And so if we are making decisions or having managers or supervisors check a list against a workers' comp list of how the employee can perform the job, before we meet with them, we're not interacting with them. And that's the important part of the ADA process. Is can we really find a way to mitigate how that disability impacts your ability to perform that specific job? And it's not a category job, everybody. It's that specific job. And so we're looking very carefully at that role. And by the way, if they can't perform that specific job after you engage several times to identify a way to accommodate them, you're going to be looking at any other job that they may be able to perform in the organization. So this includes complying with union contract. But again, that would not be your job. Your job would be informed, well, we couldn't find an accommodation for this job A, which is our usual and customary job. Now can you evaluate these other 3 jobs with the employee to see if we can find an accommodation that mitigates the way their disability impacts their ability to perform the essential functions of the job. So they're scheduling a good faith meeting. And the most important thing of that good faith meeting is, do you have a valid essential function job description? And if you don't, have you done an analysis to identify the cognitive requirements of performing the job, if it's a mental disability? or really identified the physical requirements that are related to the employee's own physical disability. This can be a really important step if that job description is not valid and accurate. Under the American Disabilities Act, whatever job description you start with in this process is going to be the one you're going to use. And if you're starting to change it as you go because you identify challenges, okay, let's make sure we're letting the employee know what we're doing. And this is the way that we train you on it, by the way. We never just have our HR person and our Voc Rehab person change these jobs without making sure they're verified by employees in some manner. And we've got a way that we train you on that to make it simple and easy. But the point is, we don't want to engage in an interactive process if the job description is not valid. The employee can't even take the job description to the medical provider to verify how their disability impacts their ability to perform the essential functions if the job description isn't valid. So we want to make sure that we are comfortable as Voc Rehab experts or Voc Rehab consultants that we have a valid job description to utilize during that good faith interactive meeting. The good faith interactive meeting is done in a timely manner, which means the job description has to be turned around quickly. This will be one of your biggest challenges as you step into this arena if you're interested in doing this kind of work with us, because the speed with which you are able to get to the employee's place, use Zoom to have them evaluate with you, do it online, whatever is appropriate and necessary for the situation is going to need to be done quickly because you need that information to engage in the good faith interactive meeting. And the employee needs that information for the medical provider to understand what they are evaluating in terms of their ability to perform the job with the medical restriction. So what is your job in this process? The role of the vocational consultant is to research all the potential opportunities that they could present with the information they've got available in the good faith interactive meeting. If you come prepared with concepts and ideas, maybe some printouts from Jan, maybe some other webpage information that you've identified, you're already interacting with the employee because you're asking their opinion about these different things. And remember, you don't want to make a decision about what the best accommodation is ever before talking to the employee. So you may be researching potential accommodations prior to the good faith interactive meeting. If you've got enough information, they may have given you the medical certificate or they've informed already to the employer what it is that they're needing. Make sure you have clear methodologies for documenting that good faith interactive meeting. This is one of the things that we've been doing at LMS for decades. We've got a very comprehensive integrated medical leave and accommodation management system that we train HR managers on so they understand the nuances of this process. You're part of that process. And having good documentation about what was discussed during that good faith interactive meeting and confirmation from the employee becomes very important. So we've got strategies to help you document that. And then we also confirm with the employee supervisor or HR will that the employee should not be experiencing any retaliation. There is zero tolerance for discrimination or harassment in our workplace. Now, the employee is going to get that information from the medical provider so they can discuss what accommodations they need. And of course, if they don't have a good essential function job description to gather that data with, we're going to have some challenges right away that we'll be curing and getting additional data on if we need to. Now, what are the factors that you're going to be considering under the undue hardship analysis is what resources are necessary to achieve that accommodation. Are they easily available and obtainable? What additional money is it going to cost that organization to do that accommodation? Are those investments in line with the size of the company and the operations of the company? Who will be impacted? Productivity, employees, coworkers. So when we're going through the interactive process, the employer may be identifying, well, no, we're not going to build a $25,000 separate office space with its own air conditioning because the employee has challenges with odors in the workplace. That could be an undue hardship analysis. It depends on the size of the employer, but that seems pretty unreasonable on its face. Adding a system so they can have a place that they can have the air quality they need in a room that's available, that in the space that they need to interact, those could be all the things that are considered. Once an undue hardship is identified, we're going to want to step back in again to see if we can mitigate it. Because remember, HR managers are not trained the way vocational rehabilitation consultants are. So you have a level of expertise and a depth of knowledge that HR managers will not have in this process. So what's an undue hardship versus a reasonable accommodation? You're really determining whether the employee can perform all the essential functions of the job with the accommodation that's suggested. And if they can't perform and it meets expectations level, meaning actually meet the expectations if they were doing performance evaluation, not shine on the sky in a golden star, but meet expectations. They don't have to be the rainmaker. They just need to do the job. Maybe they weren't doing the job at a meets expectations level before. They were the rainmaker, and now they can just do the job. That's still acceptable under the ADA. HR is typically involved in that, and the manager. But vocational consultants are there to assist when that undue hardship is identified, to really document and confirm that they cannot find anything to mitigate that undue hardship. And of course, if there is an undue hardship, we are now looking at other positions in the organization they could qualify for. And you are also qualified to assist with that. So vocational consultants work together with HR and the employee to discuss when an accommodation creates an undue hardship. And we are trying, and we are trying, and we are trying, like 2 or 3 times, to really understand, is there no other way we can assist this employee in mitigating how their disability impacts their ability? And this is really where Voc Rehab shines, because you have the patience to do this. This is what you do for a living. HR is looking at it from a different perspective. We're there to help show them the side that focuses on the employee's needs, to make sure that we really documented this well. We're confirming the accommodation is meeting the expectations of the job with the HR manager, and we're stepping in if there's any nuances that they need. They're taking too long to learn drag and dictate. They don't quite understand how to manipulate the equipment. There's a learning curve to the accommodation that HR is not clear how long it should be. We can help as vocational experts with all of those challenges. And that's part of confirming the accommodation and verifying the effectiveness. The employee is able to perform and meet the expectations of the job with the accommodation without causing an undue hardship to anybody else, the organization itself, the operations, and that would be HR's job. What we've done is create a process of implementing an ADA accommodation blueprint. We have now pulled out specific trainings from that process so you can learn your role in the ADA interactive process and have a clear understanding of how you can provide these services to other managers who are responsible for managing medical leaves and accommodations in the workplace, because they don't really have the skill that you have. And it could be that you're on call when there's a complex need for an accommodation that the HR manager has not run into before. For example, we know with workers' comp that you're going to run into the same kind of injuries very often in the same operational process, potentially. A lot of us have carpal tunnel because we've been using computers for so long, and we didn't have ergonomic advice and equipment really built into the system as well as we do. So those can be predictable injuries. I don't mean to really say it that way, but workers' comp, when you're in workers' comp systems, you see the same kind of predictable injuries. But remember that ADA runs concurrent to workers' comp, and your workers' comp regulations never supersede the ADA accommodation process. ADA is way more protective than workers' comp. So no matter what workers' comp says, we are evaluating really effectively that we have done a good faith interactive meeting in an effective manner, and that the employee has had a full chance to participate in an interactive process to identify any accommodation that is outside the norm, or the manager can't easily understand, or the HR coordinator can't easily understand, and so they can't check those boxes that, yes, they can accommodate. The challenge is when they start checking, no, they can't, we are the expert who comes in to say, okay, let's document that for you very effectively to make sure if you missed something, and there really is a way to accommodate this employee, because that's the point of the ADA. We want people to be accommodated. We want disabled people in our workplace at all levels. All of us run into this at some point of another sometime, and maybe a temporary disability will be protected under the ADA. We need to identify and go through the process. You're a key part of that. For confirming an accommodation, verifying effectiveness, or denying the accommodation. So the interactive process, you're identifying a need, you're confirming the accommodation, you're verifying the effectiveness, or you're denying if it's an undue hardship. We have a role. Vocational rehabilitation consultants and experts have a very important role in this process that HR managers would love to have you step into. You're adding a level of value and a level of objectivity that is way beyond their skill level because they're not trained the way you are. But you have to remember, if you step into this arena, you are consultant, not counselors. If we can't accommodate, it's not reasonable. They're not getting the accommodation. They don't get whatever they want. They get what is reasonable for the organization to meet all the expectations of the job. That means doing all the job, not part of it, all of it, unless you're pregnant. So we're here to help you understand what your role is in that process. And as we've said, we've taken out the ADA compliance blueprint Voc Rehab services of our training and created a truncated training that includes the essential function job description development that we have identified for quick and easy updates using your existing skills, the ADA accommodation research process and documentation and effectiveness. It is different than being a vocational rehabilitation counselor. We are expected to be objective and find solutions and not create additional challenges to meet just the employee's need if it impacts the operation. So it's a very important role. And then we are part of conducting the good faith interactive meeting. We may actually be conducting the portion of it that is the ADA accommodation piece. So we have carved out a process for you to understand how to present that to a potential. And then, of course, how do you do the ADA accommodation research? And that's your expertise, but we're showing you that from the perspective of the ADA accommodation blueprint process. So check out our services. We've got this training online right now. I think Manny has something special through the end of the year. Give us a call, schedule a free meeting so you can understand in more depth what these might be of value for. And if you are an HR manager listening to all of that, please contact us. These are the individuals that we are putting together to help you understand how to do this. So you've got a bank of people that you can reach out for knowledge. If you're interested in joining our vocational rehabilitation AD accommodation blueprint process, if you're interested in joining our AD accommodation vocational rehab network, please let us know. We are building a trusted network of trained Voc Rehab consultants who our clients and other HR leave and accommodation coordinators can rely on, understand the nuances of the ADA and the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act in the accommodation piece from the perspective of an organization, not from the perspective of workers' comp or personal injury or any of the other things that we get involved in this Voc Rehab consultant. By joining this group, you'll be identified to our clients as a certified expert in the accommodation process, a certified vocational rehabilitation consultant expert. You're going to gain the tools and expertise needed to bridge that workplace gap between HR and these complex medical challenges. And then you'll become a part of this community, and we will be working with each other and meeting with each other on a regular basis so we can discuss our challenges. If you're excited to join, you'll be completing the ADA Accommodation Blueprint Voc Rehab training. You'll be becoming a member of our meeting-only network. So we meet on a regular basis to discuss the challenges, the marketing, how to get in front of HR people, and what it is like to be in the room with the employee in an organization assisting HR as a value-added asset. So look us up. Schedule a Zoom meeting if you'd like more information. We'd be happy to let you know about it. And if you're an HR manager with these challenges, we're here to help. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday.